With the Stanley Cup Final set to begin Saturday between the Edmonton Oilers and Florida Panthers, we're going to make a case for why either team can pull this off.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Locked On NHL. I want to thank everybody making Locked On NHL their first listen of the day. I am Nick Zararis, host of Locked On Oilers. That is Hunter Hodies, host of Locked On Penguins. Before we get to today's show, gotta remind everybody, today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Very straightforward today, friends. We're going to start first segment. We're going to make a case why the Florida Panthers can win the Stanley Cup. Second segment, we're going to make a case why the Florida Panthers can win the Stanley Cup. And then to wrap up, we're going to give you our all playoff teams of the best performers at every position. So, Hunter, starting with Edmonton. Them being here alone kind of feels like a validation of their team build. I know it's very easy to poke holes at, and it definitely has holes. This is one of the more unique roster constructions to make the Stanley Cup final in quite a long time. But the fact that they are here, the fact they were able to handle Dallas as well as they were, the fact they have 3 of the 6 best players in the entire playoffs, it really feels like if you got your best players going as good as Edmonton's guys are, you're going to be able to beat anybody on any given night, even if it is, winning 4 out of 7.
Right. I mean, the biggest reason why they are here is because of the play of Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and Evan Bouchard. I mean, Matthias Ekholm, he's been great defensively for the Oilers too. Zach Hyman, he's scored quite a few goals in the playoffs. Heck, even Stuart Skinner was great against the Stars during that Western Conference Final Series. And yes, I will gladly eat crow after really not giving the Oilers much of a chance against the Stars. They really shut me up pretty quick. And the team defense they also played against the Stars was phenomenal to watch. The way they were able to shut down the Stars' high-end talent was a sight to behold. I thought Chris Knobloch did a great job coaching up his team against the Stars. And again, Skinner, shout out to him. But again, the biggest reason why the Oilers are here are because of Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, and Evan Bouchard. Their top players are better than everyone else's top players. That's how it's been in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far. And they're going to need those players to be at that level if they want to get by this very, very good Florida Panthers team. And you look at the underlyings for the playoffs so far. When Bouchard, McDavid, and Draisaitl are on the ice together, the Oilers have 7 goals for, 3 goals against, 70% of the expected goals percentage. Very, very good. Without any of them on the ice, the Oilers only have 6 goals for, 13 goals against, and a 44% expected goals for percentage. All that is from Natural Stat Trick. Again, Nick, it's kind of quite simple at this point. If those 3 are on the ice, they're doing their job. If they're not, they're kind of getting caved in. So they will need those 3 to keep going. Even if just one of them is on the ice, their underlyings are still very good. Heck, I can give you just another example. When it's Bouchard and McDavid with no Draisaitl, 13 goals for, 5 goals against, 56% expected goals for. I can keep going, but I think you and everyone that's listening gets the point. As long as they're on the ice, they're going to drive a lot of offense. And the Panthers, depending on who they put out there, might be up a creek every time those 3 are out there just because of how great they've been in these playoffs.
That's really one of the conundrums, It's been, can you survive splitting McDavid and Draisaitl for them? And for the most part, most of these playoffs, they've been able to play with those 2 separate from each other. And it's deep in their lineup. The Ryan McLeods of the world, the Matthias Janmarks, the guys in that bottom 6, they're not world beaters. Their jobs are simply get the puck in deep, cycle, and get zone time. The Oilers are not asking their bottom 6 to go and create scoring chances. Their
job is to basically hold the opposition to a draw when they're out there and then leave it to kind of the big guns. Anything else is a bonus, I think. I mean, Janmark has had a goal. Connor Brown, I think, is actually playing pretty well for the Oilers in their bottom 6. But I think the goal for them is to usually get to a draw and then let the big guns go out there and do their thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's absolutely the objective. I mean, there have been games in these playoffs where the bottom 6 has had pretty solid underlying numbers because of the fact that they don't do a lot, that they just hold the puck in the offensive zone, they cycle, they put pressure. The other thing I want to say, as for, and this might be a little bit wishful thinking, this might be a little bit more along the lines of feel as opposed to analysis, but there's a part of me that's pretty confident McDavid knows he might not ever get here again. And you saw how he came out in game 6 against Dallas and how much it meant when that game was over that they were here. I'm not saying he's going to go full superhero and just carry the team, but if there was ever a guy to be able to do it, even against a team as good as Florida, it's McDavid. And I think he recognizes how hard this is. You know, they've been to the conference final twice. He's been in the league 9 years. They've made the playoffs 5 times in the 9 years he's been in the league. They've won 4 playoff series. The Oilers as an organization, if they win the Stanley Cup this year, will have won as many playoff series this year as they did from 2006 to 2023. They had 4 playoff series wins in a 17-year span. It is really hard to get here, and they had a lot of things go their way. You know, Vancouver down to a third goalie, Dallas missing some key guys, and that's part of any playoff run. You need luck to get here, but it's never going to be this doable. You know, now you only have to win 4 games. You don't pull this off this time, you're starting over next year. The number goes back to 16, and you have to make the playoffs to begin with for your number to be 16. I don't think he's leaving anything in the tank.
I agree. And another big thing is, I mean, you already hit on it, but I'll just hit on it again. They very much deserve to be here right now. They dismantled a Kings team in the first round. They find a way against the Canucks after going down 3-2. And also after the Canucks go on a barrage in the third period of game 7, they almost tie it, but the Oilers find a way to win that game. They then upset the Stars in the conference final. At least to me, they play lights out defense. They get contributions from the big guns. They also get contributions from some of the other players a little further down in their lineup, but they very much deserved to win that series. Now you face your biggest test yet in a Panthers team that really has just blown everyone away in the first 3 rounds. They blew the Rangers out, they blew the Bruins out, and they especially blew the Lightning out. So this is really an unstoppable force meets an immovable object in the Stanley Cup final. And as to the other thing you said, Nick, I agree. You don't know if you're ever going to get back to this point. And also, look how good the West is going to be again next year. Dallas is going to be right back in this, man. Colorado, you know the Avalanche are not satisfied after losing in the second round. They're going to be right there. Vegas, I mean, need I say anything more about the Golden Knights? You know they're going to be right back there as well. Vancouver, I think, you got LA, Nashville, Seattle potentially if they're able to figure out some things. The West is going to be very, very strong again next season. So you have no guarantee if you can win 12 playoff games next year, get back to the Stanley Cup final, or in recent years. I mean, this is the first time in the McDavid era that they've won more than 8 playoff games in a single playoff run. That's how hard it is to get to this point. You're right. You need a little bit of luck, but again, they deserve to be here. They need to take advantage of this and try to get McDavid one championship before, obviously, thinking about another one, but it's going to be really tough. But if there's anyone that can do it with the way he has played and the way Draisaitl has played and the way Bouchard has played, it's those 3. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And also, we always have to point this out. Their power play has to keep clicking. I know they're going up against the second best penalty kill, in the playoffs right now. Just of any team, the Panthers are at 88% penalty kill. That's going to be a really fun matchup to watch between those two, just because of the way the Panthers shut down the Rangers power play in the conference final and the way the Oilers power play kind of had their way with the Stars during that series. And they've had their way, I feel like, with every team so far in the playoffs. So really looking forward to this.
The one last thing I want to get in on the Oilers before we go to break. They started to peak at the right time. They dismantled the Stars in game 6. That was a thorough demolition where Dallas basically didn't have a chance. And I know they got the game to within 1, but never really felt like they were going to be able to break through and push it over the edge. Peaking at the right time is very important in the context of a championship run. Hunter and I will be right back. It is busy season here in the sports world. NBA Finals tip off tonight. Mavericks and Celtics up in Boston. Saturday night down in Sunrise, Florida. Oilers and Panthers for the Stanley Cup. And if you want to get in on the action and go to a game, there is no place better than through our friends at Game Time, which features some of the best ticket buying features in the industry. Things like all-in pricing, where you see the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, where you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage, where your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the industry. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals and Stanley Cup final tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I want to thank everybody making the Locked On NHL Power Ranking Show a part of your day. All right, the argument for Florida is almost as straightforward. They were here last year. They got a humbling from a team that won the Stanley Cup, which is kind of how recent history has gone, where one team kind of just imposes its will through the course of 5 or 6 games. We've only had 2 Game 7s in the last 14 years, which I was very surprised to see when I went back and looked. For Florida, it's really straightforward. Keep wearing the other team down, keep cycling, keep forechecking, and over the course of a 7-game series, you're going to outlast your opponent because your style is a lot more repeatable. And your guys are good at this. You know, it'd be one thing if you were forcing guys to play a little bit out of their comfort zone, but Florida likes to muck this up. I think that's a definite advantage they're going to have in this series, is that Edmonton's a little bit more of a breakouts and speed and transition team, whereas Florida just wants to get in your face and make you uncomfortable. So that's going to be a very interesting synergy clash to see how those two things compete. But Edmonton is the one team where you could say Florida doesn't have the best player in the series of any team in these playoffs. But Barkov can give you 80% of what McDavid can do, 90% of what McDavid can do. So it's not like, it's not like he's playing Mika Zibanejad again.
No, I mean, Barkov, there's a reason why he's the best two-way forward in the NHL, and you've seen it throughout these playoffs. The way he was able to shut down Kucherov and Stamkos in round 1, the way he was able to shut down, Marchand and Pasternak in the second round, the way he was able to especially shut down Zibanejad and Panarin in the third round. But now, Nick, he does face his biggest test yet in the Stanley Cup final against McDavid and Draisaitl. And that's going to be a really fun chess match for me. How does he do against those two players, one of which is the best player on the planet? Does he hold them to a draw? Does he get the advantage over them? Does he lose it pretty badly? I'm really excited to see, just because Barkov, I know he's played against some outstanding players in the playoffs so far, and he is the best two-way forward in the league. He hasn't gone against playoff McDavid and Draisaitl yet. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But for the Panthers, the way they hog the puck all game, it really frustrates the opposition. And it also wears them out, tires them out, whatever word you want to use for that. That's how I think the Panthers, if they want to win this series, that's what they need to do. They need to get to their cycle early. They need to get to their forecheck early, keep hogging the puck and just tiring out the opposition where they have the puck basically all game. That's what they did against the Rangers in the Eastern Conference Final. And for the Rangers, all they were doing was just getting to the red line and dumping it down low. Like, that's all they were doing, just because they couldn't get the puck off of any of the Panthers skaters. There was a reason why the underlines were so much in favor of the Panthers. I think the Rangers were 30% for expected goals, close to high danger scoring chances, just because the Panthers were hogging the puck all game and they were getting all of the chances. If the Panthers want to win this, they're going to need to play that same exact style. Outside of Barkov, at least limiting McDavid and Draisaitl, I think Tkachuk could get to another level as well. He's been good during the playoffs for the Panthers, but I think he has another level to reach in the Stanley Cup final. I also just want to make sure that he's not limited like he was last year against Vegas. Nick, I know he got banged up during that series. Just hopefully he can stay healthy, just because he's been good during these first three series, but I think he has another level to reach. And then also Sergei Bobrovsky. He has been awesome throughout the playoffs so far for the Panthers. If he is able to finish this off, I was talking about this to my co-host Pat on Locked On Penguins this week when we were doing a preview. If Bobrovsky is able to finish this off for the Panthers, I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer when his career ends. I really do.
He's already got an argument just on the two Vezinas alone. Yeah. I mean, everybody who has two is in except for one, I believe. And you add a cup to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just like with the way he's been playing these last couple of years, it's the best hockey I think he's played at throughout his career. I mean, I know he has a couple of the Vezinas, but the way he's played in these last two playoffs, I think trumps those Vezina years, in my opinion. So he needs to keep playing great. I think he will. I discussed the Panthers penalty kill against the Oilers power play. That's a big matchup to watch. But also, can the Panthers' depth keep shining? Yeah, their top guys have been getting it done. Barkov, Tkachuk, Verhaeghe. But look at Anton Lundell, Nick. He's been fantastic for the Panthers throughout the playoffs. Look at other players, for example, like Evan Rodriguez. What about Sam Bennett? You also have Vladimir Tarasenko. He had a big goal against the Rangers in Game 6 in the last series. Just players like that. I mean, we also could throw in Gustav Forsling. That matchup, how does he do against the Oilers' top guns? Excited to see, just because Forsling's been awesome for the Panthers in these playoffs. Probably the most underpaid defenseman in the league right now, in my opinion. And we obviously should put Reinhart in there for the core players who have been great. But if the Panthers are going to do this, it's going to be because Barkov at least limits McDavid and company, and their depth outshines Edmonton's, and Bobrovsky plays his tail off.
I think that's the key here, because Edmonton is the one team that has enough high-end talent where it's comparable. Edmonton's bottom six is not going to do a whole lot offensively. Florida's can. You know, you mentioned Lundell, who had a really good play, a really good series against the Rangers, scored a really important goal in Game 5. When you have quality depth that can control possession, force the other team to play defense, that's the key for Florida in this series. You make Cody Ceci, you make, if Desharnais draws back in, if it's him, if it's Broberg, you make Kulak, you make Nurse, make Edmonton's defense play defense. Over the course of 7 games, you're going to win that battle if they have to play more defense than you. That's really where the series started to turn for Edmonton against Dallas, was when they brought Broberg in. They started playing less defense every game. They were able to get from defense to offense quickly. Against Florida, who's going to dump the puck in a lot, it's going to be difficult for Edmonton to get those breakouts, those clean regroups that they like so much. So there's a real interesting style clash that's going to happen there. And Florida has the guys. And on top of having stars, their stars like to muck it up. I can't say the same about Connor McDavid. Will he go to the net? Yeah. He's not the same type of going to the net as Matthew Tkachuk or Carter Verhaeghe or Sam Bennett or Sam Reinhart, who seemingly is always in the crease or right around the crease, making your goalie uncomfortable. And Stuart Skinner, God bless him, he's not Bob. He's not Bob. Bob's got a great resume. He's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame regardless of how this series goes. Stuart Skinner needs to be good. And I know I had tweeted the stat the other day that the Oilers are like 8-1 in the playoffs when he has an 890. Probably going to need to be about 900, 905 if you want to beat Florida in the series. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but you look at Skinner's number in these playoffs and there are just enough stinkers in there to crater his save percentage.
He's got to be average. I think that's at least what he's got to be if the Oilers want to win this series. Pick-wise, if you want to end the segment with this, I think this is truly a coin flip, man. I really do. Both these teams can really do this. This is going to be a really fun Stanley Cup final. Give me the Cats in 7 by the slimmest of margins. I think the Panthers are going to do just enough in this series to limit McDavid and Draisaitl. Again, just enough, and Bobrovsky is going to outduel Skinner, and the Panthers will win this in 7. I know I'm eating a lot of crow for the Oilers beating the Stars in the Western Conference Final, but give me the Panthers in 7. What about you?
Yeah, I talked about this on Locked On Oilers that went out this morning. I'm picking the Oilers, and everything about recent NHL history says it'll be in 5 or 6 games if the Oilers are going to win, not 7. But I feel disrespectful to Florida picking the Oilers to win in 6 games. So Oilers in 7. Coming up next, Hunter and I will give you our all playoff teams. So stick around. Thank you to everybody joining us. The third segment, this is fun. This is where we get into the hypotheticals and the team building and the conversation about who's had good playoffs. I cede the floor, Hunter. I need 3 forwards, regardless of position, 2 defensemen, and a goalie for your first all-playoff team.
So for me, goalie-wise, I think that's a very easy decision, Nick. Igor Shesterkin. I mean, I know I could go Sergei Bobrovsky. He's been great for the Panthers, but the biggest reason why the Rangers, I think, got as far as they did was the play of Igor Shesterkin. Vinny Trocheck, he was awesome for the Rangers, don't get me wrong. Zibanejad, I think, was good in the first round against the Capitals, so was Panarin, but the Rangers don't get that far without the play of Shesterkin. And he was keeping them in every single game. Yeah, those games against the Panthers were close, but I feel like they would have been blowouts if anyone other than Shesterkin was in net. I know there are other elite goaltenders in the league, but Shesterkin showed why he is the best goaltender on the planet right now. He is my goaltender on my all-playoff team.
Okay. Defense,
so Evan Bouchard, that's fairly easy with the level he's been playing at for the Oilers. I was going to go Heiskanen, but I'm going to go Cale Makar for my other defenseman. The level that he was playing at in the first 2 rounds was spectacular. When the Avalanche won games, it was because he was playing his tail off. And when he would go God mode, it was lights out for the opposition. The underlyings when he was on the ice were tremendous in terms of expected goals, scoring chances, high danger, etc. I will go Makar and Bouchard for defensemen.
And then forwards.
Forwards, McDavid, that's an easy one for one of them. Draisaitl, with both of them with the level they're playing, I feel like those 2 are very easy. And I'm also going to go Barkov as my third forward. With how he has shut down the opposition the first 3 rounds. If the Panthers were to win the Stanley Cup in this series, he gets my vote for the Conn Smythe. If it's the Oilers, I think it's one of Draisaitl or McDavid. I think if you were to ask me right now who would get the Conn Smythe, I think it would go to McDavid, but you can easily make an argument for Bouchard or Draisaitl. So that is my all-playoff team for this year heading into the final.
I think McDavid, very much like Sid the second time around, is going to get the Conn Smythe no matter what, even if maybe he has a teammate who has better stats or might be a little bit more important, because the narrative, the people who vote on the award, they care about the narrative. So, and that's not a knock on McDavid for saying, oh, you were only the second best team on the second best player on the team that won the Stanley Cup, but he's really kind of rounded into it. And, in that Vancouver series, he definitely looked a little bit dinged up. Vancouver was doing a good job on him defensively. There wasn't a lot of room. That was a very low scoring series, but he opened things up against Dallas. And yes, I would agree that if you were to give out the Conn Smythe right now, McDavid would be in the pole position. My all playoff team, this isn't very exciting. I have the same exact thing, but instead of Makar, I have Forsling, because Forsling is the engine for Florida. And I know he doesn't put up the counting stats of a Bouchard, of a Fox, of a Quinn Hughes, but he's probably the best defensive defenseman in the playoffs, and he chipped in a couple goals against the Rangers. You get that elite defense and the occasional goal, and he plays a style that's good enough to, I don't want to say carry, but make Ekblad's life a lot easier, and it just rounds out the rest of their defense for them.
Yeah, that's also a very good one too. I was thinking about him as well just because of how well he's played, but I just couldn't get over how well Makar was playing in the first 2 rounds. Even though the Avalanche lost that series to the Stars, he was on another level. And I know Heiskanen was also great for the Stars, but I just felt like Makar was playing at higher level. Yeah. So, but Forsling also great pick too with the level he's playing at. And I keep going back to with Forsling, man. He was a waiver claim. Really, he was. He was a waiver claim. Now he is the most underpaid defenseman in the league. You look at his contract, the level that he's playing at, he should be getting a lot more money, to say the least. He's been fantastic.
Yeah, man, you need those types of, you need that archetype you need the defensive defenseman who is actively good at defense. Not somebody who's just big, not somebody who just hits people. You need somebody who is actively good at suppressing scoring chances against. You look at the recent Stanley Cup winners, they all feature somebody of this archetype, or they have the all-around elite game of a Makar who every time he's on the ice, the game goes through him. But for the most part, you need that lights-out defensive defenseman this time of year because you need help. It can't just be your forward suppressing chances. It can't just be your goalie. You actively need guys who are going to take away that middle of the ice. And that was the thing for Florida against the Rangers. The Rangers couldn't get to the middle on them for anything. No matter how many times they would get the zone with speed, there was always two Florida defensemen back. And I'll be very curious to see if Edmonton has the patience to say, okay, the middle's not there. We got to cycle. We got to work for our offense. And a lot of teams that are based off of the rush, they don't like to do that. That's not to say they can't, but they have a hard time wrapping their head around what we do isn't working.
Right. I think with McDavid and Draisaitl and company, they'll obviously try to create a lot of their offense off the rush, but how will it change with the Panthers playing a different style of defense against them? How will they be able to cycle against players like Montour, Forsling, Ekblad? Heck, Ekman-Larsson, I feel like, has had a really solid playoff run for the Panthers as well. He's not what he used to be, but I think he's still playing at a decent level for the Panthers. How will they do that? Will they have long shifts in the Panthers zone, cycling and forechecking and getting to those high danger areas? I'm going to be really watching for that as well. It's just, there's so much intrigue about this matchup overall. This is probably the most excited I feel like I've been for a Stanley Cup final in at least a few years because of the way these two teams play. They're both a lot of fun to watch. And I'm just curious to see if, if the Oilers, can they adjust their offensive system a little bit to beat a Panthers team that just takes the puck away pretty easily and just has the puck quite a bit. I know my dogs downstairs are maybe agreeing with me a little bit.
They're excited.
Yes.
This is what it's all about.
Yeah. This is, I know in other years, people have said, oh, these aren't the two best teams playing. These aren't the two best teams playing. These are the two best teams playing in the Stanley Cup final, bar none.
I think we talked about it last week that these were the best conference finals in quite a long time. And I think this is a validation of that these were the two teams that won. I think by default, if you win the best conference finals of recent memory, you're the best teams. I don't think there's really an argument there. Sure, could you make arguments for teams that lost along the way? Maybe in the West. I can't make an argument for anyone in the East.
No, I mean, I even said heading into the playoffs when the Panthers were humming, this was the best team in the conference. They at least proved me right there. I know I wrote off the Oilers a couple of times during the playoffs, but they shut me up. The way they beat the Kings, the way they went through the Canucks and came back from 3-2 down, and the way they were able to flat out dominate the Stars in the Western Conference final, they very much deserve to be here. They were the best team in the Western Conference, and they'll have a shot now at pulling off. I mean, would you call this an upset?
Slight upset. Florida's a moderate favorite. It's only like minus 105, something like that. They're slight favorites, but it's close.
A slight upset, sure. They have a chance to pull off, I guess, a slight upset over the Panthers. But if they were to win, I wouldn't be surprised with the way they play. I don't think anyone should be surprised at all, just because of how great they've been playing. So I'm really excited, man. I can't wait for this series to get started.
This isn't Peter Chiarelli's Oilers, Hunter. This is an actually good Oilers team. They are not paying Benoit Pouliot $5 million a year to score 8 goals. That'll do it for today's edition of Locked On NHL. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. Leave us a comment. Let us know who do you think is going to win the series, how many games. Hunter and I will talk to you guys real soon. Until then, enjoy the Stanley Cup playoffs.